Hey, Sub2ers, my name is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub2Deals Show where we talk about all things subject to. Now, occasionally we will cover some other real estate investing topics, but it'll always be something to help you with your real estate investing business. Today we have a tax lien and tax deed expert, Shellie Bready, on with us. Shellie is actually from Mississippi. She's currently living in Atlanta, and she got started investing about 15 years ago, and a couple of years ago developed a niche where she goes in and buys tax deeds and tax liens. Something I've always been interested in, but it's always been so complicated that I've just never paid a whole lot of attention to it. My attention span's not that long, but she's an expert, and she's going to talk to us today about that. Shellie, would like to welcome you to the Sub2Deals Show.
Well, thank you very much. Hi, y'all.
Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you got started, what you did before real estate.
Well, originally, and it always sounds like a story, but you have to know my accent. It is from Mississippi, but I'm from a small town of 300 people, and we even have a sign. It's called "Welcome to Puckett, home of 300 good, friendly folks and a few old soreheads." But I'm from a very small town in Mississippi. I became an insurance adjuster and a storm chaser and began following storms in 2013. And I just landed in Atlanta. They told me if I took a job in Atlanta, I've never been to a big city in my life, and that most likely I could stay there a little bit longer and make some more money. And I ended up working 7 days a week, 33 months straight at a catastrophe center here in Atlanta. And I opened a business. I realized there was a need for housing for catastrophe workers. So I opened my first business, and I still had rental properties in Mississippi the whole time going. But anyway, I have Adjuster Housing USA, and I help adjusters find housing when they're deployed during big storms. And that's how I ended up landing in Atlanta. And I didn't even tell my mom I'd moved for a long time. I was hoping she wouldn't notice the tag on my car. But I just told her I was working there. I'd bought a couple of houses, but I was hoping she didn't notice.
So you were an insurance adjuster and working all those hours and spending all that time, I know, away from your family because you're actually on site when you guys go out and do that, right?
Yes, sir.
So what got you interested in real estate investing?
Well, I had just gotten off a deployment, and again, I was finding houses for adjusters, and then I started seeing that, people were flipping houses, they were getting good deals on things. Atlanta is such a hot spot, and there were just so many opportunities, and then I went to, a couple of classes and seminars, and then I took some things online. And the more I learned, the more I was like, there might be some money in this. And so, and then I might not have to work 7 days a week, 12-hour days, So I really kind of started digging into the real estate thing, and it's worked out real well.
Mm-hmm. So you bought, I know you and I talked earlier, you said you had bought rental properties and did that sort of thing, but something, I guess, attracted you to tax liens specifically. What made that shift?
Well, the first time, I can tell you the first time I heard about tax liens, I was at a seminar. I'd actually gone to Utah to a seminar, and they were talking about flipping houses and wholesaling, and everybody's real excited. Well, they gave this guy 15 whole minutes and told him, you can tell him about tax liens. And he was talking about getting things pennies on the dollar. I had seen things online where people had paid like $10,000 or $15,000 for a property, but they were selling it for $80,000 or $90,000 without, As I was doing research, these things kept just popping up. And I was like, I want to do that. I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to pay $10,000 for a $100,000 house is what I want to do. And so it piqued my interest. It was like fireworks going off. And I was like, that's what I want to learn how to do. And so I kept, go taking classes and looking into things. And I never got a completely clear picture from anything that I was looking into. Everybody had a piece of the puzzle, but they didn't tell you everything. It's like everybody was holding a little bit something back. And to be honest, I got aggravated. And so I just put all the information together myself because I have a big heart. It's just part of who I am. And I want to help other people to be able to do this as well without saying, oh, I'm going to give you the majority of this or I'm going to get part of it. Or, I want you to have all the information.
Right.
So I tried to put something together as simple as possible that has everything that you need to start your own business that you can actually stay at home and do.
Okay. So you made that shift. Now, do I understand correctly that you pretty much focus on tax liens and tax deeds now, as opposed to just going out and doing what the traditional wholesaler or flipper will do?
Correct. That is my main focus with my real estate business right now is tax liens.
Okay. And how long have you been doing just the tax liens and tax deeds?
It's been about 2 years. I do large loss inventory, and I'm in burned buildings a lot of the time during the day too. So I'm still, working as well, but, I've been studying and learning and getting into the properties for about 2 years.
Well, tell us about your business model and really how it works. Now, you're still doing this, you said, on a part-time basis.
Yes.
But as far as your system and that sort of thing, are you buying just purely in Georgia right now, since that's where you're located, or are you buying in different states?
I'm looking in different states. I have not bought in every state that I've looked into. In Georgia, I really like the way they do things in Georgia and in Texas, and they have some places in Tennessee. Because again, I don't know who's really familiar with the way a tax lien works, but the lien on the property is on the taxes, because it's like I have, a house here in Georgia. My taxes are about $3,600 a year on my one property. If I did not pay those taxes, they would go up for auction for someone to bid on those. Okay, let's say that $3,600 is the opening bid if I didn't pay my taxes. But my house is worth several $100,000, and so they start bidding back and forth, and let's say they get it to $15,000 or $20,000. Well, if I didn't pay that $3,600 to begin with, and they auction it off for $20,000, then to keep my home, I have to pay that $20,000 lien that's been put on my house. And if I don't pay it, then whoever bought that lien will own the house after a year in the state of Georgia. The interesting thing, though, is after the tax lien is purchased in Georgia, there's going to be a 20% interest that is charged to the homeowner if it's not paid.
Right.
Let's say this house went for $20,000. So I would have to pay 20% on that $20,000 to be able to get the house back. So it's very important that you pay your taxes up front to begin with, but you can kind of end up in a mess if you do let it get to that state. But the tax investors or tax sale investors can literally get homes for pennies on the dollar, because the tax lien trumps the mortgage.
Right. I think they call it a super lien, don't they?
It is. It does. And it absolutely, it wipes out your mortgage. So let's say I owe $250,000 on the house. Then once the tax lien went through, and when you go through the foreclosure process, you have to go to the quiet title. It's not as simple as going to the auction, you're the highest bidder, and saying, bam, you win at the end. You actually have to go through the foreclosure process with the homeowner, and then you go through the quiet title process. So it's not as simple as the 12 months and you own a home.
Right.
But you still, after all the fees and everything else, your winning bid plus your attorney fees for purchasing the home, it can be the winning bid plus about $3,000 to $5,000, and you can get a very expensive property. Some of them aren't as expensive, but again, it depends on your, real estate investing strategy that you choose to, hit the tax liens with.
I know, like we talked about earlier, I had a buddy when I lived in Georgia, and he would go just to bid on them just to get the 20% return because, as you know, you've been doing this for a long time, most of them are going to get redeemed. And
Exactly.
virtually all of them that have a mortgage are going to get redeemed because the mortgage is going to allow itself to be wiped out
Exactly.
over a few $1,000s in most cases. So
Yep.
tax investing, I learned that just from my buddy that did that. It's one of the safe. I mean, as long as when you get into some of the junker properties, now you have to be careful. But when
Right.
when you're looking at deeds for nice homes that have mortgages or very nice homes, and you can't lose at 20% return, worst case scenario.
Exactly. And a lot of them, of the properties that go up sometimes are with a deceased owner where the family just didn't quite know what to do with that property or didn't realize it was there, or, for whatever reason, or they didn't want the house. And I've seen that happen, a lot of times too. And they end up just letting the house go, which doesn't, to me, make any sense. But a lot of people are in tax lien and tax deed investing simply to make that interest, because I mean, you're not going to make 20% interest in just about any other business area right now.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yep.
So what would you say? I mean, like I said, I'm only really familiar with Georgia because I lived there and I had a buddy that did it, so he explained a lot of it to me. And I know from that experience, walking through the process with him, learning, it's hard to learn because a lot of times even the people at the tax assessor's office
Have no
can't give
clue.
you accurate information. They don't really understand the law and how it works, and sometimes they're not very forthcoming with that information if they do know. It's really strange, especially if someone they know, if it's their house that's coming up or whatever
Right.
the case may be. So you know how it is being from a southern town, it's a southern state. Things in those towns can get a little cliquish and people
They
try to help
are
each other.
actually. Speaking of which, Mississippi only has their tax lien sale once a year.
Mhm.
They are having them online. You can register online July 31st, and then at the end of August, I think it's August 30th, is the Mississippi sale. The interesting thing, I even had my aunt drive down to the courthouse to talk to them, and they said, well, we have an expert on this, give us just a few minutes. And she came out and gave them a piece of paper and said, yep, that everything on the paper is what you need to know. And they were like, well, I had some questions. If it's not on that paper, I don't know it. and they're nice as they can be about it, but they're not even quite sure how their system works.
Right.
And but they also have up to 3 years redemption period, which makes it even a little more complicated. But what I suggest is once you decide and land on your place where you would like to invest, is calling and talking to the actual tax assessor. And I mean, and the person who's going to be up there bidding those properties, he's or she is going to be the person that knows it. And I've actually talked to several, and what they've said is the people who take the time to study a county, that they have seen more millionaires made on certain counties just because they took the time to be the expert in their area. And that, once one area, and I'm not saying, I mean, there are thousands of counties in this country.
Oh, yeah.
You need to find a place to land, learn everything you can about that area. But I'm not saying it has to be Mississippi or Georgia or, one place or the other. Find some place close to you to get started. But there are a lot of people that can make, a lot of money just studying just right around their hometowns.
Right. I know. And talking about the redemption now, if I understand correctly, once you purchase the tax deed, you can approach the homeowner at that point and buy their redemption rights. Am I correct on that?
I believe you can in some areas, but I'm not familiar with that in every state. I know that there are different rules for different places.
Right.
And
every
even
state's different for sure.
Even different counties. Because like in Georgia, the homeowner has that first year, the 365 days, but if you're still in the phase where you're getting possession of the property with your attorney, there's another 10% that's added on it that 366, and you can get 30% return on investment at that point.
Right.
So, I mean, again, it's just every state's a little bit different, and some states are tax deed, which is not the lien, and you can buy outright directly and then go straight into the foreclosure process.
Right.
And so there's just no, waiting, and there are a lot that are online now. And I've got all those listed. You can go to taxliens101.com and you can get a free listing of all the ones that are online. So I've tried to make it as easy as I can for everybody to, pick a spot to land, to study everything in that one area.
Okay. Well, what would you say? Now, I know you do some stuff online, and I know when I was in Georgia, they would publish in the local newspaper every month, because their auction was every month, except in election years, which we've talked about. They didn't have an auction all year long, but every other time it was an auction every month. And some months it may be 2 or 3 properties, and some it may be 40. You just never really knew. But what would you say is your best source or best lead source for finding deals? Is it still the newspaper, or most of it online now, or
well, most of it's online. And again, I don't know the people that own taxdeedbuyer.com, but I love them very much. They made my life a lot more simple. I can look on the first day of the month and I can tell you, there are 11 counties that are having their tax sale this month. I can see exactly what state is having a sale that month. I can, get a general idea of the listings. I only use their service to find specific properties after I've done my own research, because they, charge per property. But I pay for the subscription every month to be able to use them as a tremendous resource. But once I find out where they're having the sale, then I go to the county and I get their specific information from their website. If it's not listed, I give them a call at their office, and they usually email it to me, because a lot of times, it's not listed on the website itself. But everybody I found is very friendly, and they'll just, email whatever I need with the list right over.
Okay. So do you have any favorite tools that I know you mentioned the taxdeedbuyer.com website as a resource. Do you have any favorite tools that you use in the business that help you evaluate that you could share with us?
Well, I have one other, and that is bestplaces.com. Again, I don't know these folks, but I use their website a lot. It gives the general idea of the area to help me decide if that's a place that I want to invest my money. They give you the population, the average income, the average median of the prices of the homes, the unemployment rate. They've even updated it where they tell you how many COVID cases, which is kind of depressing. But they really have all types of information on there, and I usually use them. They give you highlights of the area, building, things that are building projects, that sort of thing. And so I've really enjoyed using Best Places.
So do you actually bid on some of these tax liens sight unseen as far as the house goes, or do you make a point to go out and actually look? I mean, it seems to me that this could fall into the area of remote investing too, where you could, buy all across the country, but you have to have some kind of evaluation process that you use.
Well, so far I have done a lot of driving and I've driven, 4 or 5 hours to tax sales, and, and I've gone the day, I usually go the day before. I have worked my list and gotten everything off of there that I do not want to even look at or waste my time with. I have them in a certain order, and then I've got a website that I use for scheduling out I put all my addresses in, and then it helps me go bam, 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 one to the next in, the most efficient way. I spend the whole day looking at properties, and then I go to the tax lien the next day. And what I'm basically doing is I have my list, and I'm narrowing until I have just the ones that I want to bid on. I went to Muskogee County in Georgia last weekend. I didn't end up bidding on anything, but all the ones that I wanted to bid on, they paid their taxes the day before. And so I got there, and the ones that I was mainly interested in weren't, on the auction block, which I'm happy for the family. I really am. But all of the other properties I was looking at would have taken a major rehab, and I didn't have that kind of time to commit to something that far away. But every one of the properties went for about a $5,000 tax lien. And so, there were properties that from anywhere from $20,000 to $70,000, and all of them except one went for $10,000. Everything else was, like $5,200 and less.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Can you give us an example of a deal maybe that you're working on right now?
I'm looking in Mississippi, and it's going to be completely open on July 31st, so I can interpret it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I've looked into it, the more I found I don't have any definite answers. It's been hard to figure them out, to be quite honest, but I'm working on it. And I have several people kind of in my network in Mississippi that they're like, well, Shellie, as soon as you figure those out, if you'll let us know. So we're kind of working on those together. So I've been putting a lot of energy into deciphering their system in Mississippi right this minute.
The Sub2Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, do you want to learn how to get the deed but need a little help getting started? Want to learn how to fill out the paperwork, how to use a land trust, how to market for deals, how to negotiate with sellers, and more? Join us in the Sub2Deals Facebook coaching group. Get the benefits of one-on-one coaching without the big price tag. Learn to do Sub2 right with coaching in a group setting and mastermind format. Head over to Sub2Deals.com right now and click on Consulting and Group Coaching. We'll save you a seat. Back to the show, the Sub2Deals Show, with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
All right. Well, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask people is to ask. I know when you've been an investor for a long time, you've seen a lot of strange situations. I mean, and I've had people tell me about. My question is, think about your most unusual deal. Can you tell us about that? I mean, I've had people tell me about murder for hire plots and just all kinds of crazy.
My.
Yeah.
No, mine wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that good.
Well, tell us about your most unusual deal that you've done in your 15 investing.
It was going to be so great. It was going to be awesome. I put out these signs that said, I buy zombie houses. And I put them all over Atlanta, and I had people that called me and said, didn't you know this is where they filmed The Walking Dead? You really shouldn't put up signs like that. But anyway, I got a lot of calls. Mm-hmm. And we bought a house for the right plot price in the right place. The house had been abandoned for over 15 years. And huge lot, completely overgrown. And I looked at it and I saw the most beautiful zombie house coming back to life. And anyway, we got to working on the house, and the more we worked on the house, the more we found that, it needed. And every time we tried one thing, something else went wrong. And again, this was our first flip. And then we found out, you have to get a contractor that's licensed the correct way and not somebody that's working under another contractor's license. So that was a painful first lesson. And then we found out about making sure your work permits were done correctly, because we messed that up too. Mm-hmm. And then, it was like a series of unfortunate events. And then we got everything, hooked up to the house, and then all of the sewer lines and everything from the original house collapsed underneath the house. And it was just like everything. We did not nearly plan enough money to be able to rehab the house properly. Mm-hmm. And so everybody made money but us. Mm-hmm. Let's see, the contractors made money, and the real estate agent made money, and everybody but us made money.
Yeah.
So, and that's the way it happens sometimes, right? But, I've learned that you make money when you buy a house, right, and not when you sell it. And so that's the other thing that was very attractive about the tax liens, is that you can get them at a much better and be able to be prepared, to have more wiggle room if you want to, do the rehab. But, I've got a couple other ideas as to ways to save the families and make some money that, are a little bit different too. But as far as the unusual story goes, my zombie house, it died. I couldn't bring it back to life at all.
Now, when you bid on an auction, whether it's a tax deed, tax lien, whatever it may be, when you're paying the county for back taxes, now they expect cash on the barrelhead. Am I right? I mean, they don't finance.
Well, again, some places you have to register in advance, some places you don't. But there are people that they're walking around there with $50,000-$60,000 cash. They do have to pay that day. Some of the counties require cash. Some do certified checks. But you have to pay within usually the first day. Some of them give you like 48 hours, which is not really common. But you usually have to have cash on the barrelhead.
So is there a strategy now? A lot real estate investors, or most of them, especially getting started, they're drawn to the no money down stuff. So is tax lien or tax deed investing something that an investor that doesn't have a lot of money can do, or is there a strategy for that?
There are actually several strategies that you can use, but you have to keep in mind that it's not as simple as just winning that bid the first year, because after the year's up, you also have to pay for that next year's taxes.
Right.
So you have to keep in your mind, okay, I won this bid for say $10,000, but the taxes are going to be due for another $1,500 at the end of this, and then go through the foreclosure process. So I just tell people up front to keep that in mind, that it's not just the upfront cost. After a year, you have to have it budgeted out to do that next step. But there are tax sales, I know in Indiana, some of them in Kentucky, some of them in Michigan, and some in Georgia, that the houses are going for $400 and $500. I mean, total. And they're not necessarily the best properties, but if you put a little bit of time, even if you clear the property and you get it down to the ground, you might can sell it for more than the $400 or $500 you paid for it. So you do have some of the sales, the blight sales. You had mentioned you lived in Bibb County for a while, and I know that they've had blight sales where they had hundreds of properties that they sold for $400 and $500. And the person with the right vision could come in and really transform a community, if they went about it the right way. So
let me ask you this: if let's say that I'm a tax investor and I have $15,000 or $20,000 and I go to an auction, and there's a $200,000 house that's got a $3,000 tax bill that hasn't been paid, and it gets bid up to $10,000, and I pay that. How can I protect my interest in that house for that year that I have to wait if I'm in Georgia? Is there something I can do to protect my interest as far as insurance or anything along those lines, or is that money just at risk?
Well, the money is not as risky as far as the insurance goes, because at the end of the time, if they're either going to pay you that amount on the property, or, if the house burned, you would own a burned building, honestly. But there's not something you can do as far as the insurance goes. You're not even allowed on the property to inspect it before the tax lien sale.
Standard, is it pretty much standard in most states? If there's a redemption period or whatever, you could contact, I guess, the homeowner and try to buy redemption rights if you could do that. But otherwise, you can take no action until the redemption period's up.
Correct. You have to wait that entire time, and then until the foreclosure process is about, you still can't actually walk onto the property. So, they technically still own that property until you've gone through the foreclosure process, which is usually another 60 days after the auction's over.
I got you. Okay. So when you got started with tax liens and all, how did you learn to do what you do? I mean, what was the process there?
Studying. I read, I went to seminars, I had classes online, free stuff, things I paid for. I just kept looking and digging because I didn't feel like I was getting the whole picture. I would go to things and they would talk about a lot of, they talk about flipping, they talk about the inspection, they talk about insuring after the fact, what to do after the fact. But I needed to know how to study. I needed to know how to work that list. I needed to know how to look up the property and find out exactly what I was looking for. And the places that I was going, I didn't feel like I was getting the whole thing. And I mean, I even paid for one class one time just to find out, because I was like, they're going to tell me how to bid online. They're going to tell me all about all the different states. And basically they just said, here are the states, good luck with that. And I was like, I paid that much money for that. And, I share that for free as my freebie for signing up for, our mailing list. Because again, I paid a lot of money trying to find that information myself in a lot of different areas, but it wasn't the whole picture. And I've tried to create something that simply presents the entire picture beginning to end.
I got you. Okay, well, run me through a scenario here, if you will, just briefly. I mean, you don't have to go into excruciating detail, but let's just say, and let's talk about any town in the United States. Now, I know they're all going to have different rules and that sort of thing, redemption periods or not, and so on. But let's say that I had found, wherever I live, I had found a property that was listed either online or in the newspaper. It was going to tax sale. It's a tax lien state. It's going to auction, this Tuesday, and I'm interested in that house. What would be the due diligence process? If I found that house and I'm just getting started, what would you recommend that I do before I show up at the auction to make a bid?
The first thing is I'd have a lot more than one house on that list, because if you set your heart on that one, that's what happened to me last week. I drove 4 hours and I got there and I had about 15 properties and every last one of them was paid off by the time I got there.
Right.
So you have to have a bigger plan. But the really good thing was every other property there I had on my list, I knew how much it was worth. I knew how much it would be worth to pay for, and they all were kind of within my exact range of what I would have paid if I was willing to drive that far for a rehab. So you really need to look at everything on that list to be ready to begin with. So don't get your heart set on one is less than one because you can be outbid so easily. But you look through the properties. It's all about narrowing your list. First, like if the opening bid's $18,000 or $15,000, and that's where we're starting. I'm not in a position yet that's my starting bid, so I just mark those in red. I just start more in my price range right now. Right. And again, you just keep narrowing down till you have your list. Okay. Let's say you go to the property. You look around from the outside on the street without creeping anyone out. But you just hang back a little bit. But you can kind of tell, is there a problem with that roof? Is there a wall that's leaning? Is the porch falling off? Is it abandoned? If it's abandoned, people have been known to walk into those places and look around a little bit. I don't know who those people would be, but some people have been known if a house is abandoned and the door happened to be wide open, to kind of walk in to get an idea. Yeah. And again, wasn't me, I don't know who those people are. But anyway, but you can kind of see, do we need all new sheetrock? Is the plumbing going to have to be done? Have they ripped all the copper out of the walls? Are there no walls left? And then you kind of, get an idea of what it's going to take to rehab that house, and you keep that number in mind when you're calculating out what your highest bid is going to be on that property. Because if it's something that's better, that you invest in 10 gallons of gasoline it might not be the one you want to bid on.
Well, Shellie, if you could give new investors that are interested in tax lien investing any advice on how to get started, what would you tell
I would look around home first, because it does get kind of tiring driving 3-4 hours in one way. If you have something in your plan
them?
that you're wanting to do a rehab or that sort of thing, it needs to be something, especially if you're going to do it yourself, that's within driving distance. So, to get started, I would look near home. But you also have to check out your options there, because like in Mississippi, I've been talking to people there. There's a 3-year redemption period. That's not as fast as I personally am. I'm looking into it because I want to be a part of my home state, and I want to help people there kind of decipher this. But you want to be able to really have something that's within your wheelhouse. Some houses, if they're the higher end houses, you need to keep in mind, most likely you're going to make 20% off of it. But the other houses that need a lot of work, or they have been abandoned, or if it's just a lot or land, you're more likely to get those. So you have to keep in mind your strategy. Are you wanting to get lots or land? Are you wanting to get rehab properties? Is this something you want to wholesale? Sometimes I've seen a lot of properties that people end up purchasing, they win it, they go through the foreclosure process, and then they don't want to do the rehab themselves. They add another $5,000 or $10,000, and they've made their money back within a year. So I mean, there's several different strategies, and I've talked about all of them in detail in the book to make sure you have all your options available.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shellie, tell us a little bit about, I know that when you and I talked initially, you had told me about how frustrated you were with trying to get all the information you needed and what was available. So you actually put something together yourself, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, with the GIS, which is the system where you look in each county to see specifically the specifics about the property. Mm-hmm. Every county is a little bit different too. And most places I've had to call and ask them, how do you work this? I mean, you actually have to call them at the county and say, look, I have wonderful maps, I know exactly when the garbage pickup is on this property, but I need to know, the actual size and shape and who owns it and that sort of thing. And, there are a lot of maps that show the zoning and that sort of thing. So getting the right map for the GIS to figure out your specifics on a property is really important. Another thing is knowing your rules, because everyone is a little bit different. It's just like in Texas, technically when you own that tax lien, you own the property in Texas. And you have to wait, the 365 days for the redemption period, but technically you own it there. But there are a lot of different California. They have things on bidforassets.com, and they have things for sale constantly that are ready to be purchased. I mean, that for that straight out deed and not a lien. And a lot of those are really interesting too. And the other place that I mentioned, the taxdeedbuyer.com, they have people that you can actually pay to go out and visit properties across the country, is my understanding. So even if you're not in an area, don't let that limit you, because there are ways that you can get people to go out and look at those different properties. And if you become an expert in your area, where your tax liens and your tax deed sales, and you get to studying that sort of thing, even if you don't have any money, there are a lot of people that would be willing to invest with you in a joint venture, so that if you use your knowledge, you can still turn that into profit by becoming that expert in your area, even if you don't have the money up front. And I've seen several people do that, and they've pulled their money to get properties.
Right. Okay. Well, Shellie, I know that you put together a product that teaches how to do tax lien investing and that sort of thing. You want to tell us a little bit about it and what it includes?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's called Tax Liens 101, which is the basics on tax liens. And I've worked really hard to make it simple that anyone would be able to understand it, to kind of follow the rules, that, you know, for each state to learn how things work in each area. And my advertising people put, Shellie holds nothing back. And that's what I've tried to create, is something where that you don't have to go somewhere else looking for more information, that it's all in this ebook. And I've also got several other things that I've included that are dear to my heart, because with all the stuff with COVID going on across the country, and with all the unsettling things with the finances and unemployment and that sort of thing, what if investors helped people who were losing their homes possibly with the tax liens by becoming the bank? And if we purchased the tax lien properties, but then we turned around and helped these families we become the bank, and we allow them to continue their house. And so they buy their houses back for a rent to home or a rent to own or owner finance situation. And we, as insurance, I've been an adjuster too long, I'm sorry. We, as real estate investors, are able to save these people's homes. I mean, what if? I mean, that's just an interesting twist that, you know, and several others that I've put in my book, that, you know, a lot of people may not have to lose their home if we can just shift the mindset a little bit as to, you know, what we can do to help families, especially during these times. Because there are going to be a lot more families that have their homes that are going to be put up for auction that we can help.
Well, I know that I'm really looking forward to looking at that product. I know I've got it, but I haven't had a chance to look. I've been out of town for the last few weeks, but looking forward to taking a look and learning more about tax liens. And they can find that product at, you have a website?
I do. It's called taxliens101.com. And they also have a freebie that kind of explains the basics of tax liens, how it works, and it tells you all the states that have online auctions, and that is free. The book itself is $97. It is jam-packed with information that can help you build your own stay-at-home business. And I'm really excited about it.
Okay, great. Well, it sounds great. Well, Shellie, I certainly appreciate you being on here with us today and telling us about tax liens and about your product, and you know, helping us get a little bit better understanding about how they work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, Sub2ers, that's it for this episode of the Sub2Deals Show podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode along with a complete transcript at sub2podcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute and it helps others discover the show. You can subscribe as well as leave a rating and review by visiting Apple Podcasts and just do a quick search for the Sub2Deals Show. Finally, if you haven't yet, you can join our free Facebook Subject To group at sub2forum.com. You can also find lots more resources to help you grow your real estate investing business at sub2deals.com. So until next time, keep learning, keep talking to sellers, and you will buy some houses or tax deeds.